Welcome back to our channel where we share updates and untold stories about Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. Today we bring you some news. King Charles evicts, Prince Andrew Royal Lodge lost and Sarah left behind. Recent news reports have described a major change in the living and financial arrangements of Prince Andrew, Duke of York, and his ex-wife, Sarah, Duchess of York, after King Charles III made some decisions. These changes mark a new phase in how the monarchy is handling the Duke's status after he stepped down from public duties. There are two things that are at the heart of the changes: Andrew's long-term home at Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park and the financial support systems that have kept the household he shared with the Duchess going for years. The choices show that the sovereign is trying to balance family responsibilities with the institution's focus on a smaller, more responsible monarchy. Since 2004, Prince Andrew has lived at Royal Lodge, a Grade 2 listed residence in Windsor Great Park. The property used to be the home of the late Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother in Windsor. It is now a major part of the royal estate and has the conservation duties that come with being listed. A Grade 2 designation means that a building is of exceptional importance. It makes it harder to change the structure and requires the owner to keep its architectural integrity, which means they have to keep it up for a long time. The Duke signed a 75-year lease with the Crown Estate to get Royal Lodge. This meant he had to pay a little amount of rent, while also paying for a lot of the repair work himself. The lease made him accountable for the care and character of the house, and it gave him long-term ownership and a level of seclusion and stability that is rare even among the highest-ranking aristocrats. Royal Lodge has been a private retreat for the Duke since he effectively stepped down from public responsibilities in 2019 after a very catastrophic scandal. Even still, some news sites have said that King Charles has decided that it is no longer possible to keep a non-working royal in a vast high-security palace. The major point of the argument is that it costs too much and is too obvious to keep a large house for someone who no longer works for the crown. This calculation takes into account two related factors: how well the royal family manages their money and the danger to their image of keeping up appearances of rank for someone whose public position has been placed on hold. It takes a lot of work to keep up a historic estate like Royal Lodge, and the security needs are quite strict. Heritage standards say that inhabitants and tourists must do ordinary maintenance and conservation work, but they also have to invest money in security staff, specialized alarm and surveillance systems, safe transit arrangements, and other steps to keep them safe. Groundskeeping, preventive repairs, and conservation to avoid more expensive repairs later all add up to a lot of money each year. The Duke was no longer getting a yearly grant from the Sovereign Grant, which is public money for working members who perform official obligations. This raised issues about whether he could pay for continuing expenditures from private sources alone. In the past, Andrew's income came from his Royal Navy pension and private provisions from the late Queen's estate. After Charles became king, the management of that private estate changed, which led to a new assessment of who was responsible for its upkeep and safety. According to allegations in the press, the king has told his brother to leave Royal Lodge by a certain date, with some sources saying that the deadline is early 2025. If Andrew's time at the 30-room home ends as planned, it will be the end of an era and a physical separation between the Duke and the main royal center at Windsor, where other senior working royals, including the Prince and Princess of Wales, live and work. The plan calls for the Duke to move to a smaller home, and the Sandringham estate in Norfolk has been mentioned as a likely replacement home for him. Sandringham has long been a private country retreat for the royal family. It has a number of private homes on land connected to the monarchy. The proposed move would put Andrew farther away from the daily operations and ceremonial life that take place in Windsor, which would reduce the number of times he has to work with the families who live there. People in the area have had varied feelings about the idea of Andrew moving to Norfolk. Some people in the Sandringham area have told tabloids and local news sources that they do not want a high-profile royal to move there because they are worried about more security changes to their everyday lives and the attention that comes with having a famous resident. Some people have been more receptive or disinterested, seeing it as just another chapter in the long history of royal property usage. National media coverage has included both sympathetic pieces that stress the necessity to care for a family member and antagonistic pieces that stress public anger and perceived privilege. Putting private family demands next to communal needs shows how important it is for senior royals to be careful about where and how they live, and how their decisions about where to live may affect the public. The legal conditions of the Duke's Royal Lodge lease make things more complicated. Legal experts have said that a 75-year lease is an exceptionally lengthy time to stay in one place. They have used harsh language to characterize it, with some calling it cast iron, which gives him a lot of legal rights that might in theory be used to stop an effort to remove him. A lengthy lease gives the leaseholder rights that may be enforced under property law, and it restricts the landlord's power to end the lease without reason. It usually contains promises to keep the property up and an expectation of ongoing occupancy in exchange. But property rights do not usually work by themselves. The king has practical authority because he controls money, has a say in how family resources are used, and has the larger powers that come with being the head of the family. In short, even a strong legal claim to residency may be undermined by reliance on family-controlled financial assistance and the political dynamics of intrafamilial negotiation. Legal rights can become virtually unfeasible if an individual cannot bear ongoing expenses or lacks the necessary support to maintain existence on a royal estate. One little but recurring element in the news is that the Duke is supposed to have a collection of teddy bears, with some reports saying he has more than 70. Tabloid stories have used the story as a quick way to say weird or immature. A moving van joke about a bedload of teddies outside Windsor Castle became a popular joke. The story is not directly related to the legal and financial concerns, but it shows how personal quirks may become symbols that shape how others feel about someone's ability to get privileges. Media stories regularly use little quirks to mold people's ideas of what is proper and what is privileged. The changes are not only in the buildings. The king's approach seems to be based on a major change in how Prince Andrew is supported. The Duke stopped getting money from the sovereign grant when he stopped doing public work. Instead, his income has come from a combination of his Royal Navy pension and private savings. After Charles became king, he took over the late Queen's private estate and the family's money. In this situation, the king has chosen to help his brother with money from his own private funds. Several news sources, including The Guardian, said that King Charles agreed to give the Duke money to help him move and to pay for upkeep at a smaller home. According to those reports, help includes a one-time payment reported in the news as a six-figure sum to cover relocating costs and an annual stipend that continues. The most important thing that published reports stress is where the money comes from. They say that the payments come from the king's private income, mostly from the Duchy of Lancaster, and not from public sources. The duchy is a private estate that gives the royal money for personal and official expenses. It is not the same as the royal grant, and is not paid for by taxpayers. The king wants to protect the arrangement from accusations that public money is supporting a relative whose official function has been cut down by portraying the allowance as a private family concern. The Duchy of Lancaster is a legal and historical collection of lands, investments, and other assets that are kept in trust for the king or queen, apart from governmental financing systems. For a long time, the Constitution has allowed the king to utilize royal money for his own purposes. However, in today's world of increased scrutiny, any transfer of royal revenue to family members draws public notice. The Crown's effort to make the deal secret and not public is made clear by framing the assistance as coming from the duchy. It is important to make that difference. Using government money to support a family member who is not doing public tasks would certainly lead to a lot of criticism, but a privately paid family allowance may be framed as a responsible act of private duty. Reports say that the stipend has been set up such that the person may live well, but not too lavishly. This is meant to keep them from spending money that might make them seem bad in public. The technique is like a restricted allowance, a certain amount of money that is meant to cover basic requirements and keep spending in check. This is part of a bigger plan where the king or queen balances their private family duties with the need to control public opinion and maintain the monarchy's finances and image. The specifics of oversight, what rules apply to appropriate spending, what accountability measures are in place, and how long the agreement will last, are still something that the family talks about and the public wonders about. The restructuring's most direct impact on people is on Sarah, Duchess of York. The Duchess and Prince Andrew have been divorced since 1996, but they lived together at Royal Lodge for decades in a domestic arrangement that combined their private lives with the benefits of being close to the royal family. Her work as a writer, speaker, and businesswoman has been helped by the fact that she is still well known because of her connection to the royal family. The Times reported that the Duchess would not be going to Sandringham with her ex-husband because King Charles's financial arrangement did not include her. She was told to make her own plans to move on with her life. This means that their shared living arrangement, which lasted long after their legal divorce, is officially over, ending a unique situation that combined personal and semi-official benefits. For the Duchess, not being able to receive the king's secret stipends is a big change. Some news stories have connected this news to rumors of her personal money problems. She recently put a high-value Mayfair house that she bought a few years ago up for sale, but she is believed to be losing money on the deal. Analysts and observers saw this kind of sale, particularly when the company was short on cash, as a probable sign of liquidity issues or the need to borrow money. Asset sales may be motivated by a number of things, such as downsizing or changing strategy, but the Duchess's finances are said to be tight because of the combination of asset sales and the end of informal royal assistance. No matter what the reasons are, she has to make quick choices about where to live, how to make money, and how to get more attention from the public that will affect her future. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, their children, have been caught in the midst. Both have dealt with a lot of public attention since they were kids and have tried to build their own professions and families, but they are still tethered to their parents' public fortunes. Rebecca English, a royal correspondent for the Daily Mail, said that the princesses were very upset and quoted a source as saying they were more disappointed in their mother than in their father. If this is true, it shows a clear family dynamic. The daughters' reported disappointment in their mother suggests they see her decision to go her own way as a form of abandonment or as putting her own interests ahead of the family's. The Duchess has said in public that her connection with her daughters is like a tripod, which means that there are three supports that rely on one another. Reports that Beatrice and Eugenie are unhappy with recent events suggest that the tripod is breaking apart at a time when it should have been coming together. This puts them in a personal and public bind. They are not working royals on the front lines, yet their personalities and jobs tie them to the institution. Dealing with their parents' public consequences while also dealing with family problems puts them in a very awkward situation and raises concerns about how adult offspring of senior royals deal with loyalty, independence, and public scrutiny. King Charles's decision should be seen in light of his stated goal of modernizing and simplifying the monarchy. Since taking office, he has pushed for a vision of a slimmed-down royal household, an organization that is more responsible for its use of resources and less vulnerable to reputational risk from family members who are not directly related to the line of succession. The Andrew incident has put that vision to the test by forcing the king to deal with a close family member and meet public expectations for responsibility without being too harsh on the family. People say that the king is being careful and thinking about his obligation to his brothers while trying to maintain the institution. He has been hesitant to implement actions that critics may see as too harsh against a sibling. As a sovereign, however, he must also think about the long-term interests of the monarchy and the trust of the people. The policy that came out of this seems to strike a compromise between family assistance and institutional discipline. It meets the Duke's needs privately while putting limits on his public activities that may cause controversy and cost the public money. A well-planned mix of private assistance and a definite end to official duties shows that the person is trying to find a practical middle ground between their affection for their family and their duty to run a national institution. It is said that the Prince and Princess of Wales's position has had an effect on the resolution. Several stories say that Prince William and Catherine, who want to be in charge of the monarchy's destiny, have pushed for a clear line between core functioning royals and others whose actions may put the institution at risk. Their stance is based on a realistic calculation. The Crown's long-term survival rests on public confidence, and any residual connection with someone whose name is linked to serious accusations might damage that faith. The couple's move to Adelaide Cottage on the Windsor estate, which sits close to Royal Lodge, brought the problem inside the home. Sources added that the Prince and Princess of Wales did not like how close they were to each other and how it looked. They felt that a clean break would be beneficial for both the family and the institution. Their involvement had both moral and practical weight in the king's decision-making, showing how attitudes toward managing reputation and dividing roles have changed over time. Any study must return to the circumstances that led to Prince Andrew's formal withdrawal from public life, his connection with Jeffrey Epstein, and the charges about Epstein's illicit activities. Claims such as that the Duke had sexual intercourse with Virginia Giuffre while she was a juvenile hurt his image very badly. Many people thought that the Duke's effort to defend himself in public, especially in a 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, was a public relations nightmare. He gave an alibi by saying he was at a Pizza Express in Woking and used medical issues to explain some of the physical traits that some people saw. People were skeptical and made fun of the interview, which led him to stop doing public responsibilities, since it was clear that his credibility and the Crown's image had been damaged. When Ms. Giuffre filed a civil claim against the Duke in the United States, the legal side of things became even more serious. After a long legal battle, the two sides came to an agreement outside of court in early 2022. The press said that the settlement may have been as high as $12 million, but they did not say how much it was. The settlement formally ended the civil action, but it had strong symbolic and reputational implications. Even though the defendant did not acknowledge guilt, paying showed how serious the charges were and how risky it was to keep forward with the lawsuit. For the Crown, the settlement meant both legal finality and a threat to its image. It closed one chapter but left public issues about responsibility unanswered. Reports say that the late Queen used her own money to help settle the lawsuit dispute. At the same time, the Queen took away her son's military and royal duties, and he stopped using the title His Royal Highness in any official capacity. These actions officially cut ties with the institution and were part of an attempt to provide responsibilities and honors to those whose public behavior was above reproach. Political and investigative interest in Epstein's network did not go away even when the civil case was over. Congress and other investigative bodies in the United States have continued to look into Epstein's associates. So even if the Duke moves to a more private place, he will not necessarily be safe from ongoing scrutiny or from the public's lasting judgments about the allegations. The effects of the Andrew scandal go beyond the immediate family and raise important concerns about what it means to have a monarchy in a contemporary democracy. For detractors of republicanism, the event strengthens their arguments against inherited privilege. They contend that birthright facilitates the evasion of social and legal repercussions faced by others. The capacity to retreat to a privately financed, cushy living instead of confronting complete transparent responsibility is presented as proof of systemic injustice. The case is used in larger discussions about justice openness and how power is shared in a democratic society. On the other hand, supporters of the Crown say that the King's activities are appropriate management and needed modernization. Some people think that Charles's choice to cut his brother out of the public royal circle and make private assistance a family duty is an example of institutional housekeeping. An institution that corrects itself by limiting public access to those who no longer carry out official tasks and by keeping tight control over family finances shows that it is strong and can change. Supporters say that maintaining the monarchy's legitimacy may mean making hard personal decisions within the family, and that clear private actions, where feasible, are necessary for the crown's long-term survival. One apparent result of the king's path is that the royal family is moving toward a more focused and streamlined structure. The model that the king and his heir choose focuses on the direct line of succession, the king, the Prince of Wales, and their households. A limited number of people are required to do public obligations with discretion, honesty, and high standards of behavior. Non-working royals. Those who do not represent the crown in public should be more clearly segregated or put in a private role. In practice, this recalibration makes it less appealing to keep big families and costly homes for family members who live far away. This limits the risk of scandal and the impact on public or royal resources. The choice to take Andrew out of Royal Lodge and cut off financial relations with the Duchess has several ramifications. For the king, it is both a family management issue and a message from the institution family members who no longer play a public role that is important to the monarchy's contemporary purpose should not keep things that confuse the public about their official position. For the Duke, the result is a controlled type of private exile. He is still supported by private finances, but is no longer at the ceremonial and public center of the institution. For the Duchess, this change marks a big step toward becoming financially and residentially independent from the royal world she has lived in for decades. People who are directly impacted are said to be very unhappy. People say that the Duke and Duchess are unhappy with the conclusion, but it is not clear how unhappy they are or what secret family talks led up to the choices. The substantive conclusion, on the other hand, seems to be final. They are moving away from Windsor and ending their joint home, which has lasted through and beyond their formal divorce. Andrew's life is expected to be calmer in the next several years, focused on a smaller property like a home connected to Sandringham with a certain amount of money to spend, and the long-term effects of his relationship with Epstein. The Duchess has to sell some of her things and change how she presents herself to the world and her finances. This is a big task for her and a chance to start over in her life outside of the royal palace where she has lived for a long time. This family's new home layout raises bigger considerations about responsibility privilege and the long-term viability of hereditary institutions when they are under more public scrutiny. It questions whether private settlements and family discipline are enough to deal with significant claims that affect the public, and if arrangements that keep a person who is facing serious allegations comfortable may be made while still following the rules of equal justice and public responsibility. The king's actions, which were motivated by a desire to preserve both his brother and the institution, show how hard it is to balance individual allegiance with public obligations. In the end, the Royal Lodge incident is a clear example of the problems that may arise when family money and public office mix. It is a tale from home that has turned into a national discussion about how an old institution adjusts to current norms of honesty and openness. The king's decisions to provide private assistance while ousting a troublesome individual from the core of public royal affairs exemplify a policy aimed at mitigating harm and safeguarding institutions. It is still unclear whether such a policy will please critics, keep the public's trust, and lead to a strong model for the monarchy. The practical effects are evident. For now, the Duke has to leave a house he has lived in for 20 years. The Duchess has to make her own decisions, and their children have to deal with the personal effects of a family that is split apart by circumstance and reputation. The larger question about royal privilege responsibility and the future of the monarchy will continue to be a topic of conversation long after the relocation from Royal Lodge is over. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for the time being.